The massive crystalline archway loomed ahead like the mouth of some ancient beast. Lieutenant Commander Jake Williams adjusted his dress uniform one final time as the transport vessel approached the docking platform of Astral Station, home to the most powerful governing body in the known universe. Behind him, his diplomatic team remained silent, each lost in their own thoughts about what they were about to face. The Galactic Council had ruled over 200 civilizations for nearly 4,000 years. Their summons was not a request, it was an absolute command that no species had ever dared to ignore. The fact that humanity had just received one meant their 5,000-year secret was finally out. As the transport sealed into the docking bay, Williams could see the security escort waiting for them. Towering Krellian guards in biomechanical armor flanked humanoid figures that shimmered with barely contained energy. Even the air seemed to vibrate with menace as they stepped onto the platform. "Welcome to Astral Station," rumbled one of the guards, its voice emanating from somewhere deep within its crystalline chest cavity. "You will follow the designated path. Do not deviate. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not touch anything." Williams nodded curtly and gestured for his team to follow. Dr. Rachel Blake, their xenobiologist, clutched her datapad with white knuckles. Colonel David Park kept his hand near his ceremonial sidearm out of habit, though they all knew weapons would be useless here. And Ambassador Linda Torres wore the expression of someone preparing to negotiate for the survival of her entire species. The corridor they were led through defied human understanding of architecture. The walls curved impossibly, creating optical illusions that made seasoned astronauts feel dizzy. Holographic displays showed real-time feeds from across the galaxy worlds being terraformed, massive construction projects spanning solar systems, and fleet movements that involved millions of ships. But it was the other delegates they passed that truly drove home the scope of what they faced. Beings of pure energy floated past in geometric configurations, creatures that looked like living rock formations stomped by on limbs that shook the floor. Spider-like entities skittered across the ceiling, their many eyes tracking the human delegation with undisguised curiosity. "My God," whispered Dr. Blake. "The diversity here is incredible. Some of these species must have evolved in conditions we can't even imagine." "Stay focused," Williams murmured back. "Remember, we're not tourists. We're here to answer for what the Council thinks are crimes against galactic peace." They reached the main chamber entrance, doors that stood 50 meters high and appeared to be carved from a single piece of quantum crystal. As the massive portals swung open, the sound that emerged was overwhelming. Hundreds of different forms of communication created a symphony of clicks, whistles, electronic tones, and harmonics that the translation matrix struggled to process. The chamber itself was a sphere, with seating arranged in concentric rings that extended in all directions. At the center, suspended in a column of pure light, sat the Council's presiding authority, a being whose very presence seemed to bend reality around it. Williams led his team down the central walkway, acutely aware that thousands of eyes, sensors, and other forms of perception were focused on them. The weight of history pressed down on his shoulders, as he realized that the next few hours would determine humanity's fate in the galactic community. "The species known as humanity stands accused," boomed a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "For 5 millennia, your world has been under quarantine. Yet 3 cycles ago, your vessels appeared at our borders. Today, you will explain this violation." Williams stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly in the acoustically perfect chamber. "Honored Council, humanity requests the opportunity to present evidence before any judgment is rendered." A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the assembly. From the upper galleries, a delegate with multiple heads spoke in unison. "The quarantined species speaks of evidence. Your world was isolated because you posed a threat to galactic stability. What defense could you possibly offer?" This was the moment Williams had trained for his entire career. He gestured to Dr. Blake, who activated her datapad. The air above the chamber's center shimmered, and a 3-dimensional star map appeared, but not the galaxy as the Council knew it. The hologram showed star systems where official records indicated empty space. It revealed trade routes that supposedly led nowhere. Most shocking of all, it displayed colonies, hundreds of them, scattered throughout Council space. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Delegates who had maintained perfect composure for centuries now gestured wildly in agitation. Energy beings flickered between colors at frequencies that hurt to look at. The chamber's translation systems overloaded as dozens of species attempted to voice their shock simultaneously. Silence. The presiding authority's command carried such force that even the most excited delegates immediately fell still. Human delegation explained this deception immediately. Williams looked up at the towering figure and allowed himself a slight smile. Honored Council, there is no deception here. Every colony shown on this map was established with full documentation, filed through proper channels. Every trade route was registered according to galactic law. Every territorial claim was submitted through the appropriate departments. Impossible, hissed a serpentine delegate from the mid-tier seating. We have monitored the quarantine zone constantly. No human vessels have left your home system. That is correct, Williams agreed. No human vessels left our home system. Because our home system left us. The silence that followed was so complete that Williams could hear his own heartbeat. Dr. Blake manipulated her controls, and the holographic display zoomed in on what appeared to be empty space, where Earth's solar system should have been. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all configurations, Williams continued, 5,000 years ago, when this council voted to quarantine humanity, you assumed you were trapping us in our home system. What you actually did was provide us with the perfect cover for the greatest engineering project in galactic history. The display revealed the truth. Hidden behind layers of holographic camouflage and spatial distortion was humanity's real achievement. They had moved their entire solar system. We have spent 5 millennia traveling through space itself, Williams explained. While the Council believed Earth was locked in place, we were actually touring the galaxy. We have visited every major civilization, studied every species, learned every language and custom. We have been your neighbors, your trading partners, your allies. Colonel Park spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. The quarantine was not our prison, council members. It was our cloaking device. The implications were staggering. If humanity possessed this level of technology, if they had truly been moving freely through the galaxy for 5,000 years without detection, then everything the council thought they knew about the balance of power was wrong. William stepped closer to the center of the chamber. Which brings us to why we are here today. 7 cycles ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something that forced us to abandon our concealment and reveal ourselves. The holographic display shifted, showing the edge of the galaxy. There, moving steadily toward inhabited space, was a fleet unlike anything the delegates had ever seen. The ships were massive, clearly not of galactic origin, and there were thousands of them. The Harvesters, Williams said simply, an extragalactic species that consumes entire civilizations. They have destroyed 23 galaxies that we know of, and they will reach the outer rim in approximately 8 months. The chamber erupted in chaos, but this time, it was different. This was not shock or outrage. This was terror that transcended species barriers. Williams waited for the noise to die down before continuing. The good news is that humanity has been preparing for this threat for the past millennium. We have built defenses, developed weapons, and created strategies that can stop them. The bad news is that we cannot do it alone. He looked around the chamber, meeting as many different forms of perception as possible. 5,000 years ago, this council voted to quarantine humanity because you feared we might disrupt galactic peace. Today, we are here to offer our hand in preserving galactic survival. The presiding authority's form pulsed with colors that no delegate had ever seen before. If what you claim is true, then this council owes humanity a profound debt. But first we must verify these claims. Williams nodded and gestured to Ambassador Torres, who produced a small device. It projected new images and brought real-time footage of human fleets already moving to intercept Harvester scout forces at the galaxy's edge. Because, Torres said with quiet determination, the war has already begun. Captain Victoria Hayes stood on the bridge of the HSS Sentinel, watching the tactical display with the calm focus of someone who had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. 3 light-years beyond the galaxy's edge, the advanced scouts of the Harvester fleet moved through space like dark predators stalking their prey. Contact bearing 27 Mark 6, reported Lieutenant Commander Sam Rodriguez from the sensor station, confirming 18 vessels, each approximately 3 kilometers in length. They are not like anything in our databases, Captain. Hayes nodded, her eyes never leaving the main screen where the alien ships appeared as twisted silhouettes against the cosmic background. Each vessel seemed to be grown rather than built, with organic curves that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. They moved with purpose, extending tendrils into space to sample stellar radiation and gravitational fields. "Weapons status?" she asked. "All plasma cannons charged and ready," replied Commander Lisa Chen from the weapons console. "Quantum torpedoes loaded, gravitational mines deployed in Formation Delta." "Communications, any response to our standard first contact protocols?" The communications officer, Ensign Michael Thompson, shook his head. "Nothing, Captain. They are not even acknowledging our presence. It is like we do not exist to them." Hayes allowed herself a grim smile. That was exactly what human intelligence had predicted. According to data gathered during their 5,000-year observation period, the harvesters had a fatal weakness. They were so focused on consumption that they often ignored anything they did not immediately recognize as food or threat. "Helm, bring us to position Alpha. Make it look like natural drift." The Sentinel adjusted its position with subtle thruster movements, sliding into an attack formation that appeared random to external observers. Around them, hidden by stealth technology that made them invisible to conventional sensors, 49 other human vessels moved into similar positions. On the main viewer, the harvester ships continued their advance toward the galaxy's outer systems. Their movement was eerily organic, like a school of deep-sea creatures following ancient migration patterns. Occasionally, one would extend feeding appendages into space, tasting the cosmic radiation that drifted between stars. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez called out, tension creeping into his voice. "I am reading massive energy spikes from the lead vessel. It appears to be analyzing the gravitational signature of the Nexus system." Hayes felt her jaw tighten. The Nexus system was home to 14 billion Altarian civilians, wise, peaceful beings who had never harmed anyone, and whose greatest achievement was a form of art that used stellar radiation as a canvas. "If the harvesters reach them first, all ships, this is Sentinel Actual," she spoke into her command headset. "Target assignments are confirmed. Remember, we need to create enough of a disturbance to draw their attention away from inhabited systems. Make every shot count." The acknowledgments came back immediately from the other ship captains. Admiral Foster aboard the HSS Defiance, Captain Zhao on the HSS Vanguard, Captain Rodriguez commanding the HSS Thunderbolt, are names that had become legend during humanity's secret preparations. "Beginning countdown," Hayes announced. "All ships, fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." Space erupted in brilliant light as 50 human warships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons unleashed concentrated stellar energy that could crack asteroids. Quantum torpedoes folded space-time to reach their targets instantaneously. Gravitational mines detonated in precise patterns, creating shock waves that rippled through the void. The effect on the harvester fleet was immediate and devastating. The lead ships, caught completely unprepared, suffered massive damage as their organic hulls were torn apart by forces they had never encountered. Bioluminescent fluid leaked into space like alien blood, creating strange aurora effects as it interacted with the human weapon's exotic energies. But the harvesters adapted with frightening speed. The surviving ships began to change, their surfaces flowing like liquid as they reconfigured themselves for battle. Weapon ports opened along their hulls, sir. Not mechanical gun emplacements, but organic apertures that began spitting globules of corrosive plasma toward the human fleet. "Evasive maneuvers," Hayes ordered. "Pattern Delta 7. The Sentinel rolled and dove, its enhanced engines allowing it to move in ways that seemed to violate physics. Around them, the other human ships executed similar maneuvers, their formations flowing like a deadly dance through three-dimensional space. The battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Traditional space combat relied on predictable physics and conventional tactics, but this engagement featured humans who had spent millennia developing technologies that bent natural laws, fighting aliens whose biology was so advanced it resembled magic. "Direct hit on Target 7, reported Commander Chen. "Their hull is regenerating, but slowly. We can hurt them." "Captain," Rodriguez called out urgently. "Massive energy buildup detected from the primary target. Whatever they are charging, it is unlike anything we have seen." On the main screen, the largest harvester vessel, Abrao, a nightmare of organic curves and pulsing biolights, Arato, was gathering energy in what appeared to be a feeding maw at its center. space around it began to distort as gravitational forces built to incredible levels. Hayes had studied this phenomenon in the intelligence briefings. It was called a consumption pulse brew, a weapon that could strip entire planets down to their component atoms and absorb the energy released. If it fired into the galaxy, all ships emergency transmission to Galactic Council, she ordered. Tell them we need immediate evacuation of the Nexus system and everything within 60 light years. We are about to see what these things can really do. The energy buildup reached critical levels. Space itself seemed to scream as the Harvester ship prepared to unleash destruction on a scale that dwarfed stellar explosions. But then, just as it was about to fire, something unexpected happened. A new voice crackled over the communication channels, not human, but speaking perfect standard galactic. Human vessels, this is War Commander Thyrak of the Hegemony Battle Fleet. We are coming in fast on your starboard flank. Hope you saved some targets for us. Hayes looked at her tactical display in amazement. Dozens of new contacts were appearing, crawler ships from every major civilization in the galaxy. Hegemony battlecruisers, arachnid war swarms, ethereal light vessels. Even massive Cronian siege platforms that moved like flying mountains. How did they get here so fast? Commander Chen asked in wonder. Rodriguez checked his readings twice before answering. Captain, according to these sensor logs, they have been following us for the past 8 hours. Hidden just outside our sensor range. Hayes could not help but laugh. Humanity had spent 5,000 years secretly observing the galaxy. But it seemed the galaxy had learned a few tricks about stealth as well. All human vessels? This is Admiral Foster on open channels, came the transmission from the HSS Defiance. Looks like we have company. Welcome to the war, everyone. Try to keep up. The combined fleet of human and galactic vessels opened fire as one. The space around the Harvester ships became a storm of energy beams, exotic matter weapons and technologies that pushed the boundaries of possibility. The consumption pulse that had been building in the primary target was disrupted, its energy dispersing harmlessly into space. But even as they celebrated this victory, more contacts began appearing on long-range sensors. The scout fleet they were fighting was just the beginning. Behind it, still weeks away but approaching steadily, was the main Harvester armada, thousands of ships, each the size of small moons. Captain, Ensign Thompson reported, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. They are requesting immediate conference with our fleet commanders. Hayes nodded grimly. The easy part was over. Now came the real challenge, convincing hundreds of different species to work together against an enemy that had already destroyed 23 galaxies. The fate of the Milky Way would depend on whether ancient grudges and political differences could be set aside in the face of absolute extinction. The first battle was won, but the war had only just begun. Signal the fleet, Hayes commanded. All ships to rendezvous coordinates. Time to show the galaxy what humanity has really been building for the past 5,000 years. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened aboard the massive diplomatic station Unity Prime, positioned at the exact gravitational center of the galaxy. For the first time in its 4,000-year history, the council chamber had been reconfigured for military strategy rather than political debate. Admiral Rebecca Foster stood before the assembled delegates, her uniform bearing the insignia of the newly formed Unified Defense Command. Behind her, a holographic display showed real-time tactical information from the ongoing engagement at the galaxy's rim. The situation is more critical than we initially assessed, Foster began without ceremony. Our combined fleets have successfully repelled the Harvester advance scouts, but intelligence gathered from the battle indicates the main fleet will arrive in 12 standard days. When it does, we will be facing an armada of over 10,000 vessels. A collective shudder ran through the chamber. Even the stoic Cronians shifted their massive crystalline forms uneasily at this revelation. High Arbiter Vex of the Arachnid Consortium clicked his mandibles in what his species considered deep concern. Admiral Foster, your human vessels performed admirably in the engagement, but I fail to see how any fleet, regardless of composition, can stand against such overwhelming numbers. That is where you are wrong, Arbiter, Foster replied, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had spent decades preparing for this moment. Numbers are not everything. The Harvesters are powerful, yes, but they have critical vulnerabilities. They have grown overconfident after destroying 23 galaxies. They expect their enemies to fight using conventional methods. She gestured to the hologram, which shifted to show detailed analyses of harvester ship configurations. Dr. Martinez, our chief xenobiologist, has been studying their technology for the past 60 years. Would you care to explain what we have discovered? Dr. Elena Martinez, a woman with intense dark eyes and graying hair, stepped forward. Thank you, Admiral. Honored delegates, the harvesters are not simply using advanced technology, they are technology. Their ships are living organisms, evolved over millions of years to consume and adapt. But evolution, by its very nature, creates dependencies. The display zoomed in on the organic structures covering the harvester hulls. Every one of their vessels requires a specific type of cosmic radiation to maintain cellular stability. Without it, their biohulls begin to deteriorate within hours. The problem is this radiation only exists naturally in the voids between galaxies. Ambassador 6 of the Reptilian Federation raised her scaled head. Are you suggesting they transport this radiation with them? Exactly, Dr. Martinez confirmed. Each fleet has what we have termed sustainer ships, our specialized vessels, that generate and distribute the necessary radiation to keep their armada functional. Destroy those ships, and the entire fleet becomes vulnerable, finished War Commander Therak of the Hegemony. The massive warrior's biomechanical form pulsed with what might have been anticipation. But how do we identify these sustainer ships among 10,000 vessels? Admiral Foster smiled grimly. That is where our long observation period becomes invaluable. We have been tracking harvester movements for over a millennium, and we have identified their behavioral patterns. The sustainer ships always position themselves in specific formations protected at the center of their battle groups, but recognizable if you know what to look for. The hologram shifted to show tactical projections of the approaching armada. Highlighted in red were dozens of vessels that looked subtly different from the others, slightly larger, with more complex organic growths and surrounded by specific escort patterns. The challenge, Foster continued, is that these ships are heavily defended and positioned deep within their fleet formation. A conventional assault would be suicide, but humanity has developed something far from conventional. She nodded to someone off-screen, and suddenly the chamber's lights dimmed. When they came back up, 3 figures stood in the center of the room, but they had not been there moments before. The delegates reacted with shock and amazement. These were humans, but unlike any they had ever seen. They wore form-fitting suits that seemed to bend light around them, making them difficult to focus on directly. When they moved, it was with fluid grace that seemed to defy normal understanding of physics. Allow me to introduce the Ghost Division, Admiral Foster announced. Elite soldiers who have undergone genetic modification and cybernetic enhancement, specifically to fight the harvesters. They can phase through solid matter, become temporarily invisible, and operate in the vacuum of space without life support. One of the ghost soldiers stepped forward and removed her helmet, revealing a woman with silver eyes and intricate bioluminescent patterns along her temples. Major Sarah Knox, Ghost Division Command, she introduced herself. We have been training for this mission for 40 years. High Chancellor Zorth's energy sphere pulsed with colors indicating profound curiosity. How is such technology possible? The energy requirements alone should be impossible to achieve. Major Knox smiled, and when she did, her bioluminescent patterns brightened. With respect, Chancellor, humanity has had 5,000 years to develop technologies that other species might consider impossible. The ghost process involves quantum manipulation at the cellular level, allowing us to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. But the real advantage, Admiral Foster added, is that the harvester's sensors are biologically based. They can detect conventional matter and energy, but ghost soldiers operating in quantum flux are essentially invisible to them. The implications were staggering. If human ghost soldiers could infiltrate the harvester fleet undetected, they could potentially destroy the sustainer ships from within, leaving the entire armada vulnerable to conventional attack. Ambassador Torres, who had been silent during most of the briefing, finally spoke up. There is something else you need to know. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected movement from the galactic core. The harvesters are not just coming from outside our galaxy. They have already sent infiltration forces to the center. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates realized the full scope of the threat. The harvesters were not just planning to attack the galaxy. They were planning to consume it from both directions simultaneously. Order, Chancellor Zorth commanded, and the chamber fell silent. If this is true, then we face extinction regardless of our preparations. Not necessarily, Dr. Martinez interjected. The infiltration force is smaller, perhaps 60 vessels. They are probably intended to disrupt our communications and supply lines during the main assault. But if we can neutralize them quickly, we gain a significant tactical advantage, finished War Commander Thirak. But that would require a coordinated strike across multiple sectors simultaneously. Admiral Foster nodded. Which is why we are proposing Operation Starfall, a three-pronged assault that will stretch our forces to their absolute limit. Human Ghost Division will infiltrate and destroy the sustainer ships in the main fleet. Combined galactic forces will engage the primary armada in conventional battle once their biohulls begin failing, and a special strike force will eliminate the infiltration fleet at the galactic core. The timing will have to be perfect, added Major Knox. If any part of the operation fails or falls behind schedule, the entire plan collapses. High Arbiter Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. You are asking us to commit every ship, every soldier, every resource we have to a plan that depends on technologies we barely understand, executed by soldiers who should not exist, against an enemy we have never faced before. Admiral Foster met his gaze steadily. Yes, Arbiter. That is exactly what I am asking, because the alternative is the complete extinction of every species in this galaxy. The silence that followed was profound. Every delegate understood the weight of the decision before them. They were being asked to trust their lives, their civilizations, their entire future to a species that had been quarantined for 5 millennia. Finally, Chancellor Zorth spoke. All in favor of Operation Starfall? One by one, the representatives of 200 civilizations raised their various appendages, manipulated their energy fields, or signaled their agreement in whatever manner their species employed for formal voting. The vote was unanimous. Then it is decided, the Chancellor announced. May the stars preserve us all. As the delegates began filing out to prepare their fleets for the greatest military operation in galactic history, Admiral Foster remained behind with Major Knox and Dr. Martinez. Think it will work? The Admiral asked quietly. Major Knox checked the quantum readings on her suit's display. Ask me again in 12 days, Admiral. Ask me again in 12 days. Deep within the galactic core, where ancient stars burned with primordial fire and space itself was twisted by gravitational forces beyond comprehension, Captain Daniel Cross piloted his stealth corvette through a maze of stellar debris and exotic matter clouds. The HSS Phantom was humanity's most advanced reconnaissance vessel, equipped with technologies that pushed the boundaries of physical possibility. Contact bearing 08 Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Commander Angela Brooks from the sensor station, confirming previous intelligence of 62 harvester vessels in standard infiltration formation. Cross nodded grimly as he studied the tactical display. The enemy ships were positioned around Central Hub, the galaxy's primary communication nexus that coordinated all interstellar data transmission. If the harvesters managed to corrupt or destroy it, they could blind the entire galactic defense network at the crucial moment. Any indication they have detected us? He asked. Negative, Captain, Brooks replied. The gravitational interference from the black hole cluster is masking our approach perfectly. The Phantom crept closer to its target, using the twisted spacetime near the galactic center as natural cover. Cross had volunteered for this mission knowing it was likely suicide. Even if they succeeded in destroying the infiltration fleet, getting back out through the core's gravitational maze would be nearly impossible. Captain, Communications Officer Lieutenant Marcus Webb called out urgently, I am picking up transmissions from the infiltration fleet. They are not communicating with each other. They are talking to something else. Cross felt his blood run cold. Can you isolate the signal? Webb worked at his console for several minutes before looking up with a pale face. Sir, the signals are coming from inside Central Hub itself. Someone or something is already there coordinating with the harvesters. The implications hit everyone on the bridge simultaneously. The infiltration was not just about disrupting communications. It was about turning the galaxy's central nervous system against itself. Get me a connection to Admiral Foster immediately, Cross ordered. Priority Alpha encryption. It took several tense minutes to establish the quantum encrypted link across the galaxy, but finally Admiral Foster's voice crackled through the static. Phantom, report. Admiral, we have a problem. The infiltration fleet is not working alone. They have inside help of someone who has already compromised Central Hub. There was a long pause before Foster responded. Captain, that is impossible. Central Hub is protected by the most advanced security systems in the galaxy. No one could infiltrate it without being invited in, Cross finished. Admiral, we are looking at the possibility of a traitor at the highest levels of galactic government. The silence on the communication channel was deafening. If Cross was right, it meant that Operation Starfall was compromised before it even began. Every strategic plan, every tactical detail, every troop movement would be known to the enemy. Captain, Webb called out, I am getting a clearer signal now. The transmission is coming from... Oh no, what is it, Lieutenant? Sir, the signal is originating from Chancellor Zorth's private communication array. Cross stared at the communications display in shock. Chancellor Zortha, the being who had led the Galactic Council for 4 millennia, who was coordinating the defense against the Harvesters, Hard was a traitor. Admiral, Cross said into his headset, we need to abort Operation Starfall immediately. The Chancellor... His words were cut off as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The Phantom shuddered as something powerful locked onto it with a tractor beam. We are caught, Brooks reported. Multiple contacts closing on our position. They found us. Cross made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. However long that might be, instead of trying to escape, he ordered his ship directly toward Central Hub at maximum speed. Captain, what are you doing? Brooks demanded. If we cannot report what we have found, we will have to prove it, Cross replied grimly. All hands prepare for emergency docking procedures. We are going in. The Phantom burst through the defensive perimeter around Central Hub, its enhanced engines straining against the gravitational forces trying to tear it apart. Behind them, the Harvester ships gave chase, their organic hulls flowing and adapting as they accelerated through space that should have been impossible to navigate. As they approached the massive station, Cross could see the truth with his own eyes. Harvester biotechnology was growing across Central Hub's hull like a cancer, integrating with the station's systems and corrupting its functions. Worse, he could see Galactic Council vessels docked at the station, not as prisoners or victims, but as willing collaborators. Marcus, get me an open channel to the entire galaxy, Cross ordered. Emergency override Alpha Alpha 9. Captain, that will reveal our position to every ship in the fleet, Webb protested. They already know where we are, Cross replied. Marcus, now! The communications array activated with a power surge that temporarily blinded every sensor on the ship. When the static cleared, Cross's voice was being broadcast across the galaxy on every frequency, simultaneously. This is Captain Daniel Cross of the HSS Phantom to all forces participating in Operation Starfall. The mission is compromised. Chancellor Zorth is working with the Harvesters. Repeat, Chancellor Zorth is a traitor. Central Hub has been corrupted. Tunataror. The transmission cut off as a massive energy beam struck the Phantom's communications array. But it was too late. The message had been sent. And across the galaxy, military commanders were hearing the impossible truth. Aboard the HSS Defiance, Admiral Foster stared at her communications console in disbelief. Around her, the bridge crew worked frantically to process the implications of Cross's revelation. Admiral, reported her tactical officer, if Central Hub is compromised, then all our coordination protocols are useless. The Harvesters will know our every move before we make it. Foster nodded slowly, her mind racing through alternatives. Signal all task force commanders. Operation Starfall is scrubbed. Implement Protocol Zero immediately. Protocol Zero was humanity's last resort. A plan so dangerous that it had never been tested, so desperate that it violated every treaty and convention of civilized warfare. It involved using Earth's hidden mobility system not for defense, but as a weapon. Admiral, her communications officer called out. Incoming transmission from Chancellor Zorth. The Chancellor is demanding to speak with you immediately. Foster looked at the communication request with new eyes. Was this Zorth trying to maintain the deception, or was there something else happening? Put the Chancellor through, she ordered. The holographic image of Chancellor Zorth materialized on the bridge, but something was wrong. The energy being's usual composed demeanor was replaced by what could only be described as panic. Admiral Foster, Zorth said urgently. You must not believe what Captain Cross transmitted. I am not a traitor. The being at Central Hub is not Mio. It is a duplicate, a biological construct created by the Harvesters to impersonate me. Foster studied the image carefully. If this was the real Zorth, Then the situation was even worse than they had thought. The harvesters could apparently create perfect duplicates of galactic leaders. "How do we know you are the real Chancellor?" she asked. "Because," Zorth replied, "I'm about to do something that only the real Chancellor could authorize. I am giving you complete command of the Galactic Defense Network and transmitting the emergency override codes for every military installation in the galaxy. If I were a duplicate, those codes would already be in harvester hands." A stream of data flooded the Defiance's computer system Zor's access codes that represented absolute authority over every ship, weapon, and defense system in civilized space. "There is more," Zorth continued. "The duplicate at Central Hub is not just coordinating with the infiltration fleeter, it is preparing to use the station's amplification systems to broadcast a signal that will shut down every non-harvester ship in the galaxy simultaneously." Foster felt her heart stop. "When?" "In approximately 5 hours," Zorth replied. "At the exact moment the main harvester fleet reaches optimal attack position." The scope of the enemy's planning was breathtaking. They had not just prepared for war, they had prepared for conquest with backup plans that accounted for every possible scenario. "What about Captain Cross and the Phantom?" Foster asked. Zorth's energy sphere dimmed slightly. "I am sorry, Admiral. Long-range sensors show the ship was destroyed approximately 2 minutes ago. Captain Cross died trying to save us all." Foster closed her eyes for a moment, honoring the sacrifice of a fellow officer. When she opened them again, her expression was hard as steel. "Chancellor, I am implementing a new plan. Something the harvesters will not expect because we have never done anything this desperate before." "What do you have in mind, Admiral?" Foster smiled, and there was something in that expression that made even an energy being feel a chill. "We are going to move Earth again, but this time, we are not running away from anything. We are going to ram it straight into their fleet." In the deepest levels of Earth's planetary engineering core, Dr. Amanda Reed stood before a control panel that represented the culmination of 5,000 years of human ingenuity. The stellar drive of humanity's greatest achievement hummed with barely contained power, ready to move an entire solar system across the galaxy in a matter of hours. "All stations report ready," announced Chief Engineer Ryan Walsh from his position at the primary control station. "Gravitational anchors disengaged, quantum field generators at full capacity, dark matter collectors operating at 112% of safe parameters." 112%? Reed asked with raised eyebrows. "Admiral Foster's orders," Walsh replied grimly. "She said to push everything past Redline. We are going to need every ounce of power we can generate for what we are about to do." Reed nodded and opened a communication channel to the bridge of the HSS Defiance, now serving as the command ship for the largest military fleet in galactic history. Every vessel from every civilization was following Earth toward the galactic center, prepared to make a final stand against the Harvester Armada. "Admiral, Earth's stellar drive is ready for activation," Reed reported. "But I have to warn you, what you are proposing has never been attempted before. The gravitational stresses alone could tear our planet apart." Admiral Foster's voice came back immediately. "Dr. Reed, if we do not try this, there will not be any planets left to worry about. The Harvester main fleet has just entered the galaxy, and our fake Chancellor has begun broadcasting the shutdown signal from Central Hub. We have maybe 90 minutes before every ship in our fleet becomes a floating coffin." "Understood, Admiral. Beginning stellar displacement sequence." Reed began the activation process that would move Earth's solar system faster than it had ever moved before. Instead of the careful, measured journey they had taken for 5 millennia, this would be a desperate sprint across the galaxy at speeds that defied conventional physics. The planet shuddered as forces beyond imagination took hold of it. Outside, the sun flickered as its energy was partially converted into gravitational propulsion. The other planets in the system, Aurora's Mars with its massive shipyards, Jupiter with its military installations, even distant Neptune with its deep space monitoring stations, Mars, all followed Earth's lead as the entire solar system began to accelerate. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Foster watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Earth's solar system was moving like a projectile toward the galactic center, where the Harvester fleet waited in perfect formation around their sustainer ships. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, "the Harvesters have detected Earth's movement. They are not taking evasive action. It is like they cannot believe what they are seeing." Foster allowed herself a dark smile. "They have conquered 23 galaxies, but they have probably never seen someone weaponize an entire star system before. Time to intercept? At current velocity, impact with the Harvester fleet in 78 minutes. And the shutdown signal? Communications Officer Johnson looked up from her station with worry. Still broadcasting from Central Hub. Admiral, our ships are already starting to show system failures. If we do not stop that signal soon, we will not need to stop it, Foster replied. We just need to survive it. She opened a channel to every ship in the Galactic Fleet. All vessels, this is Admiral Foster. In approximately 75 minutes, Earth's solar system is going to collide with the main Harvester fleet at 0.8 light speed. The impact will create an explosion equivalent to a supernova. All ships are to maintain minimum safe distance and prepare for electromagnetic pulse effects. The acknowledgements came back from hundreds of commanders representing dozens of species. They were about to witness the most spectacular military maneuver in galactic history, or the most catastrophic disaster. Deep in Earth's core, Dr. Reed monitored the quantum field generators with growing concern. The energy requirements for their current acceleration were pushing every system beyond safe limits. Warning lights flashed across her control panels as components began to overload. Ryan, we are losing containment in sectors 9 through 14, she called out. Walsh checked his readings and shook his head. I can compensate for now, but if we maintain this velocity much longer, the planet's molten core is going to destabilize. How long do we have? Maybe 90 minutes before complete geological collapse. Reed did quick calculations in her head. They would reach the Harvester fleet in 75 minutes, but they needed at least 20 minutes after impact to ensure the explosion took out the sustainer ships. It was going to be impossibly close. Keep us together, Ryan, whatever it takes. Meanwhile, in the void at the galaxy's edge, the Harvester fleet finally began to react to Earth's approach. The massive organic ships started to move, but their biology worked against them. They had evolved for patient consumption over millennia, not for rapid tactical maneuvering. The sustainer ships, recognizing the threat, began pumping additional radiation to their fleet, but it was too late. Earth's solar system was moving too fast, and the Harvesters had positioned themselves perfectly for consumption, which meant they were perfectly positioned to be consumed in return. 50 minutes to impact, announced. The tactical officer on the Defiance, Admiral Foster, opened a final communication channel to Earth. Dr. Reed, this is your last chance to evacuate. We can transport your team to the fleet before a... Negative, Admiral. Reed's voice came back firmly. Someone needs to maintain the stellar drive until impact. We are staying with our planet. Foster felt a lump form in her throat. Earth, humanity's birth world, the cradle of their civilization, was about to be sacrificed to save the galaxy. It was a price almost too terrible to contemplate. 20 minutes to impact, the tactical officer reported. Admiral, long-range sensors are showing massive energy buildup from the Harvester fleet. They are preparing to fire everything they have. Let them, Foster replied. Physics is on our side now. The space around the galactic edge became a maelstrom of energy as the Harvester fleet opened fire on the approaching solar system. Consumption pulses that could strip planets to their atoms struck Earth's protective quantum fields and dissipated harmlessly. Organic missiles the size of moons exploded against barriers that converted their kinetic energy into additional acceleration. 5 minutes to impact, the tactical officer announced. Admiral, the shutdown signal from Central Hub is intensifying. Most of our ships are dead in space. Foster nodded grimly. They would be spectators to the final act, but that was enough. Earth would finish what humanity had started. In the planet's core, Dr. Reed watched her readings with the calm acceptance of someone who had made peace with their fate. The quantum field generators were failing one by one, but they had held together long enough. Earth would reach its target, 2 minutes to impact. The Harvester fleet, finally understanding what was about to happen, began a desperate attempt to escape. But their perfect consumption formation had become a trap. The sustainer ships, surrounded by their protective escorts, could not maneuver quickly enough to avoid the approaching solar system. 30 seconds to impact. Dr. Reed looked around the control room at her team. The best engineers and scientists humanity had produced. They had spent their lives in service to a dream, and now they would die in service to that same dream. It has been an honor serving with you all, she said quietly. The impact, when it came, was beyond spectacular. Earth's sun, artificially destabilized by the quantum field generators, went supernova at the exact moment of collision. The explosion engulfed the entire Harvester fleet in stellar fire, vaporizing the sustainer ships and leaving the remaining organic vessels helpless as their biohulls began to fail. The shock wave raced outward at the speed of light, overloading every system within 60 light-years. At Central Hub, the false Chancellor's transmission equipment was destroyed in the electromagnetic pulse, finally freeing the galactic fleet from the shutdown signal. When the light and radiation finally cleared, there was nothing left where Earth had been except an expanding nebula of superheated gas and stellar debris. The Harvester fleet was gone, their consumption technology broken and their invasion force scattered to the cosmic winds. Admiral Foster stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the nebula that marked humanity's greatest sacrifice. Around her, the crew worked in reverent silence as they received reports from across the galaxy. "Admiral," the communications officer reported quietly, "we are receiving surrender signals from the remaining Harvester vessels." They are requesting asylum," Foster nodded slowly. Without their sustainer ships and consumption technology, the Harvesters were just another refugee species fleeing extinction. It would be ironic if humanity's final act saved not just the galaxy, but their former enemies as well. "Grant their request," she ordered, "and begin search and rescue operations for any survivors." As the galactic fleet spread out to secure the sector and begin the long process of rebuilding, Foster opened a final log entry. Admiral's log, final entry. "Earth is gone, but humanity survives. We came to this galaxy as exiles, lived in it as hidden observers, and saved it as soldiers. Today we became something new as citizens of the galaxy.